Welcome to the Bunkis Podcast. Quick couple notes on the Leafs and Raptors before I talk to Brady Quinn. It's Monday. There's lots of football stuff to be thinking about. I'm going to start quick with the Raptors. I always prioritize the Leafs. And the Raptors have, over the course of the season, earned being the lead. The winning streak's over. They lost in overtime to the Charlotte Hornets. And then yesterday, they got drubbed by the Knicks. There were a few moments in the game where I was actually feeling pretty proud of the Raptors just because they were getting back into the ballgame. They didn't have Jakob Poeltl. They were playing the second half of a back-to-back after overtime the night before. The Knicks went up 20, and the Raptors, I think, cut it to 3 even. Might have been 5, but could have been 3. And then the Knicks just kind of turned it on and pretty much kicked their asses during the third quarter and onwards. It was Brandon Ingram's worst game. I thought Quickly was solid. But yeah, they just looked like a depleted team. Didn't quite look right. Weren't able to really hang around with that group. And now the Knicks have won 9 straight games against the Raptors. 9. Which makes sense because the last couple of years for the Raps have been pretty much throwaways, and the Knicks have been uber competitive. But it does raise some questions about some of the things from the schedule. And no, I don't really want to parse through some of the teams that they beat and go, oh, well, this team was bit. Yeah, you play who's in front of you, and the Raptors beat everybody. They won 9 straight games, and they won, 11 out of 12? So there's obviously a lot of nice building blocks. But as I was thinking about how good for the Raptors, they got back into this basketball game in the second quarter. Good for the Raps hanging with it. Hey, good for Quickly against his old team, pulling up and knocking down a bunch of threes and playing aggressive and getting to the basket. Blah, blah, blah. It dawned on me that they are still in a position where moral victories apply. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but that kind of is the case. They're in this weird spot where, yes, they're capped out. Yes, their roster is full of talent that should be here for the next little while, and it kind of should work if it's ever going to work. I remember Grange wrote this awesome column at the beginning of the season about how this is not the normal kind of year for this group of 5 guys, in particular the starters, to see if it works. You're not getting a super long runway. If it's a disaster or if it doesn't really look like it's it, you got to be pulling levers immediately. You're not giving this a 2-3 year runway. But they are still in a bit of a sweetheart phase where a loss like that to the Knicks doesn't really feel all that bad. That being said, this next stretch of play is going to be uber important for the Raps because they've got 6 games. Their next 6 games, there's 5 really competent teams, and the other one is the Charlotte Hornets, who have now played the Raptors tough twice. Raps needed a closing possession where they got 2 block shots to beat the Hornets the first time around, and then they lost in overtime last time. And this game against the Knicks, December 9th, NBA Cup, it's not supposed to matter. Nobody's supposed to really care about it. All of a sudden, if you're a Raptors fan, you kind of care about it. Not in the sense that if you win it, you're going to be asking them to hang a banner, although you kind of could because they already hung the John Bon Jovi banner there. So, like, the bar for a banner is nothing. You can just hang anything. But I've said this the last couple of shows. I think that they've been leaning on Brandon Ingram a little too much, and it's worked out fine because he's been awesome. But I don't think it's a coincidence that he had his worst game on the second half of back-to-back against a good team after they were leaning on him over and over and over again in these early parts of the schedule. And to me, the Raptors do still have to find a little bit better of a balance of, hey, who's taking over the offense and not making it just turn into, hey, we need Brandon Ingram to get us a bucket basically every single time that we're in half-court sets. It has to be a little bit more of a collective than what it has been so far this season. You're going to rely on that guy in big spots. He's going to be needed when things are just not working, when games are getting tight. That's the way the league operates. You go to your star players, you go to your best scorers in the big-time moments of basketball games. But, yeah, next 6, They've got mostly competent basketball teams. And it's going to be really important for them not to just kind of shift the narrative very quickly and have it go, all right, well, now we are looking at those games a little differently. The Leafs, bipolar weekend. They play horribly against the Washington Capitals on Friday. And it sets up for, again, a second half of a back-to-back where you're looking at it and saying, man, changes are on the horizon if you don't shape up here. I mentioned it on a Leafs Talk, but they had a coach get fired based on a performance against the Pittsburgh Penguins team with a third string, maybe he was the fourth string, but a fourth string goalie in that. It really looked lined up. Yeah, that, and then you got this Panthers game on Tuesday. It's getting weighty. It's getting late early for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're past American Thanksgiving now, and they've been one of the worst teams in hockey, flat out. Not just like a bad team. People, I get it. This is a weather vane fan base. This is a weather vane city. People probably overreact to regular season losses with the Maple Leafs more than they do with other teams. And certainly they do now with the trauma that's been built up over, basically the last decade of hockey with this team. And I'll admit it, good for the Leafs. They forced me to watch one of their games. I was off Leafs Talk on Saturday, and I actually had to watch it Sunday morning because they dominated the Penguins to such a degree that you got to flip it on. If it had just been kind of status quo, I would have grabbed the old remote and hit the fast forward button and got that thing done in about 25 to 45 minutes. I would have ripped through it. Instead, I sat with it and I watched the game. So, yes, very nice step. That's happened a couple of times this year. I do wonder if they just own the Pittsburgh Penguins because they've had now their four best periods of the season against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Maybe the Utah Mammoth you're throwing in there. But here's the problem. This isn't the normal weather vane positive, negative that we've kind of grown accustomed to with the Leafs. Hey, it's 5 game sample. It's the old 5 game stretch test. How are you looking at these games? Oh, well, you like to do the 5 game segments. This is now bigger. The Leafs have been so bad that you really can't take too much from a win like that. You can say, hey, this is awesome that Dakota Joshua played better. Hey, this is great that Matthews got on the board finally. I like how that's the bar, 3 games finally. Hey, everybody got involved. They felt like they kind of needed just a breather. Obviously, that gave them a bit of breathing room. But the team going into that game, the numbers are the numbers. They're 29th in goals against. They're 31st in shots against. They're 31st in slot chances against. They're 29th in offensive possession against. And they're 30th in rush chances against. 32nd in cycle chances against, by the way. I don't like to normally throw a lot of stats all at once because I think it kind of starts to roll off of people. Like it goes in one ear, out the other as soon as you start doing that. But you get it. They are in the bottom of the bottom of the bottom when it comes to defending. And at this point, we've seen enough of a sample where they just don't look like a very good team. And a win or two, even against the Florida Panthers, is not really going to change the narrative too much for me. This is a stretch where the Leafs are going to have to change your mind from now to basically the end of December. And it might even extend beyond that. But now in Christmas is sort of a stretch where you look at it and go, all right, if there's anything here, if there's anything to these little moments, it's not going to come from games. Because the goal of this team is not to be, hey, could they hang around a playoff spot? No, they were all in this year. Myrtle and I have talked about this many different times. They pushed this team forward as a Stanley Cup contender. This wasn't, hey, we're taking a step back. They didn't give the messaging that the Raptors gave a year ago. This was, we are 10 toes down, ready to compete for a Stanley Cup. And they don't look anywhere close to that. And until those numbers drastically change and until the eye test drastically changes, then I don't really know what the conversation is. Like, okay, yeah, it's early enough where you could be going in for a playoff spot. But the opinion that I have, which is that this team sorely needs a reset, where they need to be able to sell off some of the pieces that are not attached to the core, take a step back in order to take a step forward this offseason. That's going to remain for a very long time, unless, again, this team does something quite drastically different, not just a game or two and tiny little blips and up and downs. It's not, they don't have the same basically equity that was built up over the past few seasons where you did get to ride the roller coaster a little bit and wonder, hey, some days they look like a contender. Hey, sometimes they look like they're a fraud. This is completely different. Brady Quinn is our Monday morning insider. He's a former NFL QB. Works for Fox. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing? I mean, obviously the games Sunday weren't quite what we were hoping for them to be, but I think Thanksgiving we got treated with a few good ball games.
Yeah. You have a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Yes, I know you celebrated yours prior to
Yeah.
up north, but
Yeah.
still felt like it would be rude
Yeah.
to not acknowledge or at least offer you a potential happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
last
listen,
week,
that's
so.
that's the spirit of Thanksgiving. So, did you think of me once during your Thanksgiving when my Chiefs were beating up on your, or my Cowboys were beating up on your Chiefs?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I did. I thought to myself, is this it? Is this it for the Chiefs? Because I don't think they have any room to lose another game the
Nope.
rest of the season and make it into the playoffs. On top of that, I was questioning whether or not the Dallas Cowboys are for real and if I can now buy into them because of what they did to the Kansas City Chiefs, which I think I've felt confident about what they are as an offense.
Mhm.
It's more about the defense because it was so bad, probably for the first 5 or 6 games of the season. But now, again, stopping the run, they're starting to get more pressure to an opposing quarterbacks, and it's starting to show up. And so, yeah, I think I'm now a buyer. They call me in the Dallas Buyers Club,
Mhm.
if you will,
Welcome.
of the Dallas Cowboys and what they're capable of being. But they're still the Cowboys.
Sure.
So aren't you also in buying into this,
Yes.
setting yourself up to be completely disappointed by the end of the season?
No, of course. Listen, they're not going to win. They're the Cowboys. They're not going to win. But yesterday was yet another reminder, right, that nobody's good. You just look across the league and
Rams, yeah.
Rams lose to the Panthers and the Eagles on Black Friday do their thing. And listen, man, congrats to the Bears. They deserve a ton of credit. And Ben Johnson has had this unbelievable season with this team. They're way further down the track than even the most optimistic Bears fan I think would have placed them in. But yeah, the Eagles, they look dysfunctional. The Eagles do not look like a lock it down, hey, you're going to cement this team, they're going to win a championship this year. Even the Seahawks, who played Max Brosmer, it took until a world-class mistake, like Dan Orlovsky level mistake from a quarterback, for them to basically start to run away with that football game, right? Like Minnesota was in the red zone. They threw that pick on fourth down to quarterbacks like flailing. Seattle takes it the other way. All of a sudden it's 10-0 and you feel like the game is actually over. I look at the Cowboys and say, you are definitely a team that no matter who you are in the NFC, if you draw them in a playoff series, you draw them in the first round of the playoffs, you're not going to be happy about it. Like I would much rather face, say, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers than I would face the Dallas Cowboys right now.
I think that's fair. I think in part because some of the pieces that they have, what they're capable of. I mean, Dak, at one point, too, I think you'd say he was playing at MVP level.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you still throw him in that conversation or feel like he's got somewhat of a shot being on kind of the outside. And that's maybe another conversation, too. I'm not sure who your front runner is at this point in time of the season. I think you'd say Stafford.
Still Stafford.
At least you would have until this past week's game where he, has 3 turnovers and it looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
And so, again, maybe that door opens up a little bit more. Maybe it's Drake. Maybe he's going to kind of overtake that spot. But I don't know. I'm not leaving out Dak if Dallas can do what you're alluding they're going to do, which is rip off some more games, end up making it into the playoffs, and be that dangerous team that people are concerned by. So part of me wants this for Jerry Jones.
Same.
Only for the reason of the fact that, like, he, as much as you sit there and can lambaste him for what he's done in contracts in the past, as a former player, he usually has ended up paying the guys, or the guys move on and they get paid, right? Like Micah Parsons moves on, he gets paid. They get back some stuff in return. Paid Zeke too early, still got paid right after a nice Cabo trip. He paid Dak, even after he had gotten injured, after a hot start to that season, still gave him a huge contract. You can kind of go down the line. Like, he does take care of his guys eventually. And if he doesn't, usually they kind of move on, they get paid somewhere else. But there's a part of me that, like, given Jerry's age and given how much content he's provided us, JD, I kind of hope it kind of works out for him at some point.
I do too.
Late in this stage of life.
Here's the thing, man. Has he made good moves? No. He's a soft target? Absolutely he is. But one thing I'll say about Jerry Jones is he cares. And I'm not sure, like, we're ever going to see another guy like this. Maybe. But this is like kind of an enjoy it while it's happening moment where you go, an owner who refuses to not be the general manager for decades, who gets into it with, like, did you watch the Cowboys doc on Netflix?
I've not seen the doc. No.
Okay, it's hilarious because you and I are of the age. Maybe it was a little different for you growing up as like a stud football player, but the '90s Cowboys were more a thing that were like I was a little kid. I don't really remember any of that. I remember people wearing Dallas Cowboys merch, and obviously I know those players, but it wasn't like I was living in it. It wasn't like I was watching these games every Sunday with real anticipation. But you're looking back on the past at some of the things that he did that even worked out for them, and those Cowboys teams. You're like, this is insane. This is crazy that this actually happened, and then it went down this way. And I don't know. I've got a rooting for Jerry. I don't hate Jerry Jones. I don't have ill will towards Jerry Jones. I think that the Cowboys have been run laughably, but yeah, for them to be able to have like a fun team, and this is why I believe in them though, is the Pickens CeeDee Lamb thing, the way that they were just carving up the Chiefs, like that's Trent McDuffie, who's one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL, who we've seen play in massive games and shut down big time players. He got eviscerated in that ball game. He's just doing corners are really screwed when they start to do the like, he's pushing off. It's like, yeah, man, he's catching the ball every single time. If I'm doing best units in the NFL, things that actually make a team feel like they're special, teams that really have an identity, that Cowboys identity of just like any third down, and you have to defend those two guys and then also Ferguson. And then that one guy, Turbin, who can catch a pass.
Turbin,
yeah, that can catch a pass and then just like break it. He's just like super speedy. Their offense does feel like one of the more reliable units in the NFL right now, and that's in a watered-down league.
You know, it's interesting, too, being around Brian Schottenheimer and in that system. You know, Schotty's always been, I mean, his father coach was a great coach in the NFL. He's always been able to find ways of getting the ball to playmakers, too. And I think you mentioned Turpin, you mentioned some of the other pieces. He also understood like how to put those guys in a position to succeed. And I think I'll just go back to the initial comment. Like I didn't have many reservations about what this team would be offensively because Dak is playing at such a high level. There is continuity in the system. You get Pickens, you've got that 1-2 punch on the outside that's going to threaten a lot of teams. It was more about in Brian Schottenheimer's first year as a head coach, is he more than just an offensive play caller? You know, can he be more than that to preach to the team and be able to get the guys on defense who he's barely going to see if he's calling plays on the offensive side of the ball and guys on special teams and being able to manage the game and everything that comes along with that. And I think he's done a tremendous job of continuing to motivate this team, you know, in a way that it feels genuine, right? Like you see the post-game locker room breakdowns. It feels like the team's got this confidence about them, that they're building towards something. You know, we always talk in the NFL, like you want to be playing your best football come November, December, and into January. And I feel like that's where this Dallas Cowboys team is. It wasn't great early. Eberflus got a lot of flack for what that defense looked like. But now some of those pieces, the Kenny Clark edition and everything we kind of talked about, and even the linebacker edition and Logan Wilson, like we start talking about them going, oh, they are better against the run. Like, oh, maybe they are actually okay without Micah Parsons rushing the passer. And that's not to say that like Parsons hasn't been a game changer for the Green Bay Packers defense either. Like both things can be true and both things can work for both teams. But I think if you look at this Dallas Cowboys team and what Jerry Jones saw and maybe looked at it and said, yeah, but even if Mike is here, we're still going to struggle stopping the run. And we had him last year and it really didn't make as much of a difference for us defensively. So we need to figure out a way of improving our overall ability to get off the field on third down and win on first and second down. And I think he was right. Like, I think it's, you know, a little more halfway through the season, but I think you can give him that, like, all right, Jerry knows what he was doing here. And so I try to give him a lot of credit in that. And then also in Brian Schottenheimer, like seeing something in his offensive coordinator that he felt like he could elevate him and he would become a guy that can still get the most out of this offense, but still energize the team like he has.
So I'll wrap up the Thanksgiving stuff and get into what happened yesterday. But I don't know, Thanksgiving and Black Friday to me was just so much more compelling. It's crazy to look at what Ben Johnson has done with the Chicago Bears and then also look at what has happened to the Detroit Lions and not think that this guy is just the new Kyle Shanahan.
That's one way of putting it. I think I put him Shanahan, McVay, O'Connell.
Yeah, but it's like, remember, Atlanta was in a Super Bowl. They had Kyle Shanahan. Things are humming there. They look like a contender. They look like one of the best teams in the NFC. Kyle Shanahan leaves. He goes to San Francisco. Immediately, an offense that had been stuck in mud for year after year after year since Harbaugh left immediately gets course corrected, and it feels like they have an identity and an attitude, and things start to, again, feel like they're on a contender track, and Atlanta basically falls apart. And yeah, the Lions are still in the mix, but the idea that they're going to win a Super Bowl this year, I don't know. I think that's an insane take. I think that they basically got proven against the Packers. They're not in that class of teams. They're in the gets in the playoffs, loses in the first round, maybe gets to the second round. That's kind of the ceiling of the team. I look at this Bears group, and this Packers test this week is going to be fascinating. That's like the number one game that you have to watch because to me, that's going to very much determine, hey, which of these teams is like a little bit more real in terms of who could challenge in that Rams slot of best teams in the NFC. Like that's on the table for those two. But I don't know, man. I just like when I was trying to think about coordinators that left and then just immediately looked like they were worth it. Shanahan was the last example that I could think of where the situations mirrored each other this closely.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you look at like Mike McDaniel when he first got there, and you saw the improvement of Tua. You might have thought that a little bit too. I mean,
when
now
they scored 70 points
kinda,
against the Broncos.
yeah, it's kind of gone by the wayside now. But I don't know, maybe not. They seem to kind of be eking out some wins. It's a good comp or comparison. I think what you're seeing from Ben Johnson, to me at least, is offensively speaking, he is getting Caleb Williams to play, more of an NFL winning style of football where. I think there were some concerns early on with how he was kind of adapting to the system, and there are some inconsistencies in regards to just, once he gets off his first read, is he looking to run? Is he looking to just kind of escape and play backyard football? Or is he still moving through progressions and playing within the confines of the system? I think he's bought in now to Ben Johnson. I think the other thing that they've done is they've really gotten back to just saying, look, we're going to base everything off the run game. Like we're going to run the football. And in doing so, like that's going to kind of take away some of those opportunities where Caleb Williams feels like he has to do everything. And yet at times he still has that special ability to make plays that gave him comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, where he can scramble or create or make something happen, but he doesn't feel like he has to do it all throughout the course of a game. And you also don't give him as many opportunities to do that throughout the course of the game. So to me, it's been as much the balance as anything else. I think when you look at their kind of two back set too, and then their backfield and the running backs, it's almost like they've got a version of what they had with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And they're kind of building off of that where you work in some of your young pieces, your young tight end Loveland and Cole Kmet and all the other things they've got within this offense. And so I think in a way he, has been able to get this team to maximize the personnel and put them in positions to win, which you can compare him to Kyle Shanahan if you want, because Kyle Shanahan's been successful doing that with the personnel he's gotten. He reminds me of more of a guy who I got to play for in Josh McDaniels, who was very good at doing that too. And I think he's done that now with the New England Patriots calling plays for them, is he seems to find things that he can lean on where he's not asking guys to do things because it's part of his system. He's asking guys to do things that fits within the skill set of what they do well and just asking them to do it consistently well. So the growth of Caleb Williams, the trust I think he has in Ben Johnson in this, but also how he's kind of utilized the personnel that he has, I think has been a piece of all this. But yeah, I think it's a fair comparison. It's early, right? Like you're giving a lot of credit to a guy who's, a first-year head coach who hasn't taken a team to a Super Bowl or won the conference championship. And we'll see how the rest of the season goes. But yeah, I think their defense too, and the way they've stepped up, at least this past week, like it's a bit telling, but I also my bigger takeaway from that game was more of where the Eagles are at.
Yeah, that's where
I don't know if the Eagles will make the playoffs or not, but offensively speaking, like this is probably going to be a one and done year for Patullo. Like I think if you're Nick Sirianni, you've got to move on and find someone who can kind of come in there and give you more offensively, because it kind of goes back to that Brian Johnson year too, where you've just been hit or miss on some of these OCs, where the guys either do great and they become a head coach somewhere else, like Shane Steichen or Kellen Moore, or they just fall flat on their face. And that's what the Eagles are doing right now.
So that is all fair. But my question about the Eagles for you is, how can we see Jalen Hurts look so great in some moments where he genuinely looks like he's touching the top of the quarterback class? We watched him in a Super Bowl where it was just utter dominance. It's with the legs, it's with the passing, all of it. And then see games like this where I got no faith in him. All of a sudden it's, okay, well, you're just hoping A.J. Brown can catch these slant passes, or every once in a while a play breaks down and he kind of throws that lob play to Smith, and he does the basket catch. He's not even in motion. Like he's not even usually in stride. He's just kind of fielding it like a kick returner. The legs don't feel the same. The passing looks inaccurate and discombobulated. I just don't. It's hard for me to understand how a guy so recently could look so great and even have quarters like the way that he started against the Cowboys, where he went, all right, this guy's back. Like, right, of course, Jalen Hurts, and then just immediately go in the tank right after, where he can't get a first down.
I mean, look, I can't put a finger on what it is. If I could, I might be up there coaching at this point and helping them out. But the reality is, he kind of reminds me a little bit of when you look at his regular season and postseason performances, and just it kind of reminds me of like Eli, a little bit of the argument for Eli Manning, who was productive in the course of the regular season, but he would have these weeks and games where it's just so inconsistent, up and down.
Great comp.
And then they get in the playoffs and they go on a run, they win a Super Bowl, and he makes some of these big time plays. I look at what this offense, when it's most effective, it's not necessarily, I think we keep wanting it to be led by Jalen Hurts, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's led by Saquon Barkley. It's led by that rushing attack. Everything complements off of that. And you go back and look at this past week's game, it's just not a formula for success if I'm asking Jalen Hurts to throw the football 30 plus times a game.
Mm-hmm.
That just, to me, that's not how they go about winning.
Yep.
And I think you got to involve Hurts in some way, maybe more as part of the running game, which he might not want to do too as you get older in the league. Those hits add up, even though he's a strong, capable quarterback. I don't think they want to necessarily put him in harm's way with how much he's being paid too. So there's all these little elements to like what their offense looks like. But I keep going back to, I don't feel like they have an identity this season. There's a lack of consistency, which we've seen from Hurts in prior years anyways, in particular in the passing game. And it's becoming frustrating for all parties involved. But I mean, the one thing I would wonder if coming out of this game, though, is like, is A.J. Brown happy? He has a big game. He gets a ton of targets. But so it feels like is that what's going to make him happy? Is just getting enough production, targets, feeling like he's a part of the offense? Or is it ultimately about them winning and losing? Or does he feel like they need to be able to do both? Which isn't always the easiest thing to do.
I've actually wondered, watching their games, and how his target share has gone up the last 2 weeks since he did the whole video game stream thing about, like, drop me in fantasy, blah, blah, blah. If they actually, this is a conspiracy theory, I don't even really think this happened, but if there was a small part of them that went, all right, we need to get him more involved to make him a part of this team down the stretch. Like, we need to get this guy to buy in, so we're going to up the targets, we're going to up especially the red zone plays for this guy, and in doing so, they've moved a little bit away from the identity that you're talking about, which is make sure that it's Saquon and the other stuff kind of just comes, and whoever ends up getting their piece of the pie gets their piece of the pie, but we do what the Eagles do and rather kind of transition into the A.J. Brown show, and now they've lost 2 straight games.
So Hurts threw the football, 30 sometimes this past week, right? I think 20 of those targets roughly. So let's say about a third, 2/3 or a little bit less, were to either A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
If you're a really good play caller in the NFL, you should almost have every single play designed to have A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith as your number one read. And if you're a really good play caller in the NFL, you should be able to dictate coverage and do different things to at least help your quarterback know what the coverage is, to allow him to then get that football to those guys. Some of the best play callers, very rarely does the quarterback have to move off number one, number two. There's times when they have to, based on getting fooled, bad call, something happens, right? Guy falls down, runs the wrong route, whatever it is. But to me, like, I always look at that run pass split. And then when I go through the tape, especially when you have a team who's got, 2 guys who could be viewed as number one receivers. If Devontae Smith wasn't on the Eagles, he'd be a number one receiver somewhere else. So to me, almost every single pass play would literally be targeted towards, they were designed for them, unless you feel like you need a screen, unless you feel like you need something else to mix in there, maybe even situationally. But like, I remember talking to Kyle Shanahan about this back when he was calling plays for Atlanta, since you referenced that. And one of the things he said to me was, like, we threw the football, I think 40 sometimes in the game. And he goes, and Julio Jones was our number one read on 25 of them. He goes, he probably should have been our number one read on 45 of them. And it's like, when you have a guy like that, it makes sense to make sure that he's always the first targeted guy. He's always the guy you're trying to get the ball in his hands to. So when you say something like that, I just think back if I'm a play caller, like, I'm not thinking about the plays. I'm thinking about my playmakers and how I can work those plays against whatever defense we're facing to get those guys the football. And I keep going back to, like, Saquon's a part of that, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Between those 3, you'd have to say that 75% of the plays that are called should somehow, some way get the ball in their hands, or they should be targeted. And then the rest is sprinkled in. And I just don't feel like that's what this offense has been doing this season, at least not consistently. And I think this last game was an example of that.
So the Sunday slate was pretty light, right? Like we got the Steelers getting destroyed by the Bills. That was supposed to be kind of like a premier game. So I ended up spending a lot of time thinking about the AFC South because the Colts played the Texans and the Jaguars won again. And I'm like, this feels like the most relevant year that the AFC South has had since Peyton Manning or since Andrew Luck, and maybe even beyond that, because those were always like good Colts teams. And then the rest of the division, there was really nothing. This Texans defense is like for real, for real, for real. I felt myself watching Daniel Jones on that final drive going like, what a prove it drive for this guy. Like hey, change the perception if you can go down the field against this Texans offense and score and walk them off in the way that I'm going to be feeling about you. And instead, like I came away feeling much better about Houston and thinking like they're kind of in the mix because again, this year in the NFL, do you have one elite unit? And for the Texans, that's a yes. And I think that puts you into title contention. Like truly, you are a title contender if you can just be amazing on one side of the football and competent on the other. And that's the way that I look at the Texans now, where it's like they are, to me, a dark horse to actually win this thing.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it with CJ Stroud back too. Now, not that Davis Mills held them back by any means. He played well in his place, but
I got to say that's the one downside is that those two guys feel the exact same. That's not great.
No, it's not. But I also would give Stroud a little more credit in saying, like, let's just see how the rest of the season continues to pan out as he gets back in there and back more into a rhythm with all of it. And also the Colts defense is not an easy challenge by any means. And so this past week he didn't have his best game, but it also was good enough to get them the win. To me, that this game was more, as much as it was about the Texans and how good that defense is, I feel like we've kind of known that. And they're definitely a live dog, I think, within that division and the AFC playoff picture. It's more about where the Colts are at. Because that game, since to me, as big as it is as a divisional game, also one that, like, kind of got to win, right? You're at home. This is a Texans team that they could be lurking if they win this game to keep creeping back up in the division. Now you got to go play the Jaguars in their place. And the Jaguars are playing better football. And so when you really start dissecting their schedule, they have the Jags twice still. You got the Texans at the end of the season in their house.
At Seattle.
I feel like if there's at Seattle, San Francisco, you got at home, like that's not a layup. When you really start dicing up the Colts, do they win a game the rest of the season? Like, are they the team that we talked about Daniel Jones, a MVP candidate after that hot start and everything else they did? Do you now look back at the first half of the year and go, well, maybe that was more a byproduct of their schedule. Maybe that was more of this team's more middle of the road than they are an actual legit contender. Like if I had to put my money on a team falling off, it's probably the Colts.
Yeah, I think
it's probably the Colts with their schedule and how they're playing, losing 3 of the last 4 weeks, and even, barely beat an Atlanta team. It's like, this is probably the team that I don't know if they get to that. I don't know. What do you think it is? 10 wins they need to get to in order to assure themselves a playoff spot? I don't think 9 does it.
Well, I think it's between them and the Jags, right? Like those 2 games against the Jaguars, that's going to kind of determine who it is. And the Jags have been like, I don't know how many Jaguars games you've watched. I've seen quite a few, shockingly, just because, again, sports bettor who likes to watch as many TVs as possible. Like
they're like in the category of the Chargers, where their record looks good, but you're like, gosh, it's painful.
Yeah, that's it.
It can be painful to watch. Like there's never a consistent 4 quarters of dominant football in all 3 phases. It's
every
like
win
that.
they get feels like fraudulent. You're like, oh, I guess they got that one. Like, all right. It's never, you're right. It has not been a season where, if you looked at their record, if we just step back and like we got the Men in Black array stick, we didn't see any of the games, and we were just sitting here right now, and we're like, whoa, what are they? Jags have 9 wins? Yeah, or 8-4. Okay, so we're like, okay, they're 8-4. You and I would have been like, wow, Trevor Lawrence took the step. He did it. Like he took the step, and that's not the situation here. This has been totally,
or their defense has been one of the most dominant in the league, right? Or something along those lines.
Yeah, but they're the 2 teams.
You never. I mean, if you had to compare them to the Colts, though, I feel like they're also 2 teams going in different directions. Like their defense has been better of late. Yep. I think Trevor Lawrence is starting to feel more comfortable in Liam Cohen's system. Early on, you saw some of the frustration with Cohen and Lawrence and how the offense was being run. I don't see that quite as much anymore. And, Maybe that's a byproduct of playing the Titans, but
Yeah.
this past week. But the reality is, I still feel like you've got two teams going in different directions. Where I kind of look and say, I would actually be more betting on the Texans in the end being more of a factor to the AFC South than I would the Colts the rest of the way.
Yeah, there's a part of me that wishes that the NFL this season was like college football, where we could just pick the playoff teams. And for me, it would be like, okay, Colts, all right, Jags, you guys are playing in these 2 games, but this is for you get 1 seed because the Texans are getting in, and I'm putting the Chiefs in over the Chargers. Like, that's what I would be doing in my college football ranking, saying this makes the most compelling postseason.
Well, first off, you do not want that, JD. Trust me.
No, I know.
Right, right now, as a Notre Dame alum
Yeah.
and having to deal with that whole head-to-head, and
I know.
Miami and everything else. And by
Yeah.
the way, both teams could get left out.
Yeah.
BYU wins the Big 12, and Bama wins the SEC. But I will ask you this: where are the Steelers then for you?
Out.
Because that was a game last. But I'll say this: like, there's moments where I watch them, I go,
Nah.
yeah, but if they were in the playoffs, though, it feels different. It feels like if they were to win the division and someone's got to go to Pittsburgh to play, I would give them the benefit of the doubt. But that was rough. That was rough. And I'm not questioning Rodgers. Everyone knows he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. But we've talked about this at length. Like, there's just not a sense to get the football down the field. Everything feels like it needs to be out of his hand quick. And when he doesn't, he gets, crushed.
Yeah.
And he's got a broken nose, whatever.
Yeah, he's got the cast in his hand. Then they're showing him on the sideline. His whole face is red. He's freezing cold. His nose is beat up. He looks like an old man. And we got tricked with the Tom Brady thing into thinking that every great quarterback was just going to be able to do this. And do I think that the Steelers have enough playmakers? No, I don't. Like, they just don't. Losing Pickens.
Can I give you the difference, though?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I give you the difference?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like Tom Brady lost that fire?
No. And
did you ever feel like that?
No, and I feel like Aaron Rodgers' fire is just being pissed off. It's not like a motivator. It's not a leader. It's not exuding, hey, don't worry, we're going to get this thing done the way that Tom Brady did. And it's hard to compare anybody to Tom Brady, but we did for this guy's entire career. And there's a reason that he still got a starter's job despite how things went with the New York Jets. But, like, things are so bad for the Steelers right now. There's 2 things I thought of. One is I looked at the betting lines for them versus the Ravens. The Ravens look terrible. They just got eaten up on Thanksgiving by the Cincinnati Bengals, right? We're all praising Joe Burrow because he likes to play football. That's the state of sports now, is if a guy's like, I like playing sports, we as sports fans are like, wow, thank you so much for acknowledging that you actually enjoy what it is that you do. But the Ravens, I've said it to you all season, they look off. They don't look right. Lamar doesn't look fully healthy. There's something that just isn't right about this team. They stink. They're nobody. They're minus 350 favorites against the Steelers next week. Minus 350. Imagine laying points with the Ravens against anybody. And yet with the Steelers, I go, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I just don't see the Steelers doing it. So, like, if it was my college football head-to-head analogy, it would be the same thing where, like, and it is. One of those 2 teams gets a spot. One of the Jags and the Colts get a spot. I'm making sure the Texans are in, and I'm making sure the Chiefs are going to get in because, man, I don't think the Chiefs are. I think they're done. But it feels so weird to think about the AFC playoffs this season where none of these teams are going to actually have to face Kansas City. And when I look at them all on their best day, there's still a part of me that goes, I think the Chiefs could beat any of these teams in the playoffs. Like, I think that they get in and they're beating the Bills. They're beating the Ravens. They're beating the Denver Broncos.
I've kind of got a bigger picture question because when you're saying this about the Chiefs, you're saying this about the AFC in particular, I also feel this way about the NFC, right? We just talked about the Eagles. The 49ers probably should give, or the NFL should give Kyle Shanahan the Coach of the Year award because, playing without Purdy, the job they've done to still, stay in this thing. But, like, even the Rams and the way they lost to the Panthers this past week, and look, maybe that's a sign of a young Panthers team that's coming of age a bit, but it was also, at the risk of a lot of, turnovers by Stafford, him having a bad day.
Yeah.
Is parity good for the NFL?
No, I hate it.
And the reason why I asked that is, like, if you look at any good story,
yeah,
there's a hero, there's a villain, right? And many times in the NFL, that villain ends up being that team that's just dominant. It was the Patriots for so long.
Dodgers.
Then it was the Chiefs for so long. And it's like you love them to then the point where you're like, oh, okay, maybe it's a little too much, right? Maybe like, oh, we've seen enough of Taylor Swift. We're tired of seeing the Chiefs there. And they go from the hero to the villain. I feel like you're going to be missing that in this year's playoffs. And maybe 100%. It's just a reset year for the NFL where it's now the Patriots and Drake May and Mike Vrabel, and maybe they become, back that team that ends up winning and being a perennial playoff team that gets to the Super Bowl. I'm not sure who it's going to be, but it feels like where parity is talked about, at least in the college football realm, to go back there since you referenced it, is like great. Everyone talks about it. They love upsets. They love all this craziness that happens. In the NFL, it's like the exact opposite. It's like you'd almost want to have a few dominant teams that everyone's excited for to see eventually play off in the Super Bowl. We don't have that right now.
No, not even close. The difference between the AFC and the NFC, though, is when I look at the AFC, there really doesn't feel like a class to me that's on the top where I go like, oh, they're definitely different. With the NFC, do I feel like there's still parity? Yes. But I would say as of today, just my own personal, like if I was power ranking it, I think that the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Packers are three teams that are clearly better than everybody else in the NFC. And I would put the next tier down being like the Niners and the Cowboys are right there where I could see them actually beating those teams. Eagles are out of it for me right now. Like they're just, they look so lost that I need them to prove something. They're closer to that Tampa tier where it's, yeah, you're in the playoffs, but nobody's thinking that you could actually go on a run. The AFC to me is like, I have no idea if Denver is actually better than Buffalo or if Buffalo is better than the Ravens or if, the Texans are better than the Chargers. Like,
is that because of the close games the Broncos play? Like you just can't give them the benefit of the doubt because they're always winning against like, I think they play up and down to who they play.
Okay, I know.
Like that's the best way I can describe them. It's like, and they figured out a way of winning more often than not. Now,
you really think Bo Nix is going to win a Super Bowl?
Sure. I don't know. I'm not betting against them at this point. And by the way, when you say Bo Nix, you have to include like Sean Payton as part of it.
Yeah, guess what? Did you see the play they drew up on that fourth down or that critical third down? They call a timeout. They're like, okay, this is the game. We just need a first down. And I'm thinking, this is Sean Payton. He's the master of a 3-yard play. I can't wait to see what we're going to get here. And it's just like right up the middle. They ran a slant route that doesn't get executed. It's a nothing play. And Bo Nix doesn't even basically look and he throws it off of a defender. The interception that he threw to Bobby Wagner was as bad as I've seen. They have a couple drives every once in a while where Denver looks the part, where you go like, ooh, I really see it. But there's way too many stretches for them where their offense looks like this. Run into the line, check down that misses, then check down for 4 yards, punt. That's the Broncos to me. And their defense isn't that good. It's fine.
They throw a couple bombs and make some big plays. Their defense is good if they can get you in a must-pass situation.
Yes.
When they can let the pass rushers go, they can cover down. They can be good enough in pass defense if they can get up and force you in that situation. I'm only throwing that out there as the Broncos because, look, as a former player, like, you respect the record.
Sure.
To get to 10-2, regardless of the schedule and all that, I sit there and go, all right, like, I don't know if they can win a Super Bowl, but I'm not going to bet against them. Not at this point, because
I can't wait to.
So if I give you, all right, I'm trying to give you all the worst teams in the AFC that actually have good records. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you the Jaguars.
Yeah.
All right.
Broncos,
I'm going to give you the Broncos. I'm going to give you I'm not going to say the Colts at this point. I don't know how many other teams I can even give you at this point that I feel confident that actually have a decent record.
No,
God, I'd have to throw in the Colts as well because there's not, and I'll give you the Bills because they're 8-4 too.
I think that.
I mean, are you
Bills?
One of those teams isn't going to win it this year.
Okay, so I'm thinking watching this Bills game, and this is a good way for us to get back into it. Like, there has never been more urgency for a team to make it to a Super Bowl than the Bills this season. Like, I don't know if they're going to win one. But when I'm talking about special units, what quarterbacks are really just balling out of control? And yesterday, the Bills were scuffling. They're turning the ball over. Cook has that one fumble that's awful off of his own knee, and it feels like, oh, man, they might choke this game away. And then what did Allen do? He starts putting his head down, and he starts running the football, and he starts to play with fire. He's getting into it with Cam Hayward, screaming in his face, yelling after touchdown passes, and I went, that version of Josh Allen is beating anybody in the AFC in the postseason. And if there's no Chiefs and the Ravens are this lost, then the Bills have no excuse to lose to anybody. I don't care if they have to go to the road to Denver. I don't care if they face this upcoming Patriots team that has had kind of their number early on and looks like they're on the rise and the Bills are on the decline. There has never been more urgency for the Buffalo Bills. Like this entire run, just you said it might be a reset year. I don't know. Maybe the Ravens are back next year. Maybe it was just a Lamar health thing. Maybe the Chiefs retool and they go on kind of their second run as a team. If you're the Buffalo Bills, you have to be looking at this year like, man, we got to get it done today. We got to get it done now because we don't know how much longer this window is going to extend. We don't know how much longer. Josh Allen's already talking about how he's not just a football player anymore because he got a hot wife. And so he's like, I don't know, maybe I'm not as committed to taking these hits as I used to be. Bills need to do it. They're the team that I'm still picking because of the urgency. It's just hard to trust them given the track record.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I think what I'm saying is I think there's a good chance we're going to have someone new this year.
Yeah, I
Like
think
there's
so
a
too.
good chance that this is going to be
Very
that
good
reset
chance.
year where all of a sudden the Jaguars making the playoffs, Trevor Lawrence goes on a run, has a few big games, and we look at him differently. Or maybe
Totally.
that's Drake May for the Patriots, as you mentioned. I feel like we're getting to that point of the season where it feels like this year may look a little different in the playoffs and maybe even in the Super Bowl as well.
Yeah, I could totally see that. All right, last one. We have to do Shador. I've waited. I'm trying not to be too hot takey, but I'll just say this. I don't get it. Like, he doesn't get rid of the ball under pressure. He takes really bad sacks. The ball doesn't have a lot of zip on it. A lot of the plays that he's making are like checkdowns that get turned into something, or it's a wide open receiver in a broken coverage. And like, I'm not writing off his career. I don't know what he can be. It's way too early. We don't do that with other quarterbacks. So he gets this like extreme talk, right? Like Kendrick Perkins is like, he's the most impactful black man since Obama. And then you get other people who are like, he's the worst quarterback that's ever played in the NFL. And I'm like, okay, none of this is true. Trying to take out the noise. What do you just see from his play?
Well, I see a lot of the things that I think concern me about his play at the college level. And, a lot of other people took the blame for some of that, right? Like, for example, the offensive line, the offensive system, they moved on from a guy named Sean Lewis, who's now the head coach of San Diego State, who's doing a tremendous job. His name's actually surfaced on some bigger head coaching jobs because of not necessarily getting along with Shador and not run the system the way he wanted. So we're not protecting them the way they wanted to. So he took a lot of sacks, held on the football too long then. And so those things are resurfacing. I think with time, he can, and experience, he can grow out of understanding. I got to get rid of the football. If I can't, we're not going to be able to find that, hit that receiver, hit that window, or I'm just going to be getting hit all the time. And I don't want to do that. But it does make the offensive line look worse than it actually is. Some of the big plays downfield, I think that's one thing he's done really well in the course of his career is he does keep his eyes down the field. He is always looking at trying to push the ball down the field. But ultimately, is he accurate enough in some of these tight window throws? Is he going to be able to adapt enough and then be able to grow enough with this year to be the quarterback that he's capable of? Probably not, given their circumstances in Cleveland. So, look, I'm not going to rush to make any sort of judgment. I think what you saw of him as a player in college is exactly what he is right now in the NFL. And so some of those, things you're talking about are some of the, bad interceptions or, hey, it's 4th down, 26, whatever it was. Just throw the football downfield.
Yeah, I know.
Like you're going to turn the football over regardless. Like running and then getting down, it's like you're preserving yourself. And I get it, the game may be out of hand, but take a shot, do something, right? It's okay, yeah. Which is, look, there's a lot of quarterbacks who don't want to throw the football incomplete.
Yeah.
They'll run out of bounds and take a loss, which goes down as a sack, instead of throwing the football away because they want a PTR.
Yeah.
They want to protect the rating. There are quarterbacks who are taught that now. That's how bad it is. And that's why you get a lot of people who read box scores and look at analytics, all the numbers, and they're like, well, look at his completion percentage. He's an accurate quarterback. It's like, no, he's not. It's more of a byproduct of him not throwing the football away when he should, instead of taking a negative loss. So anyway, he's going to learn all these things. He's just, he's just a rookie. And so I'm not going to overreact like everyone else in the world or, pick a side one way or another. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Again, Brady Quinn, our Monday Morning Insider, Fox Sports, former NFL QB. Thanks for making time, buddy.
Yep. Thanks for having me, JD.
See you next week. All I'll say is Caleb Caleb held on to the football too long, the way that Shador does too. The difference is when I watch Caleb make throws, every once in a while I was like, whoa, I don't see that with Shador. So maybe he's fine. Maybe he's good. Maybe there's like an energy or an attitude to him that resonates with his teammates that we'll see over time. But so far, I just don't know why we're having such big talks about him given the stuff that's on tape. Anyway, subscribe to this podcast, leave 5 stars, reach out anytime at JD Bunkis. Quick break, and I want to talk about the Jays relief market. Who wants to win a bunch of cash while doing the best thing this holiday season? Sportsnet 590 The Fan is all in supporting the 50-50 Fortune for Sick Kids. It's a 50-50, so the more money we raise, the more kids we can help, and the more holiday cash you can win. Current take-home prize, almost $200,000. Buy your tickets at 5050fortune.ca or text the word money to 59590 and we'll send the link right to your phone. 18 plus, please play responsibly. Standard message and data rates apply. Lottery license RAF 1518410. Little quiet news. Just some moving. Just baseball market's now moving. People are starting to get things done. Ryan Helsley signs with the Baltimore Orioles. Pretty pricey ticket for a guy that wasn't great last season. But yeah, he and Iglesias now off the market. Diaz and Suarez, to me, still feel too pricey for the Jays. Maybe Suarez's market doesn't materialize the same way because he's sneaky old. But there's no question that starting pitching was the priority, and that, for me personally, Bo Bichette or Kyle Tucker, one of the two is a must for the Blue Jays. But I would think that the way that they're prioritizing things and the way that people I've spoken to are saying that they're prioritizing things with pitching means that back end of the bullpen is still one of the biggest issues for this team. They need to get somebody who maybe isn't the closer day one, who doesn't walk in here and immediately bumps Jeff Hoffman off of his position, but that at least competes with him for that role. And you don't go through a regular season where if Hoffman's given up moonball after moonball after moonball at the Rogers Center, that you're not squinting to see works better. And the Jays, that was one of the problems this year, is like they didn't have a reliever that you felt way more confident in. There were little stretches, little pockets where there was a guy, but nobody for a long period of time that felt like a definitive answer at closer outside of Hoffman, so the Jays stuck with him. So to me, that kind of makes it feel as though the Jays are down to two guys, Pete Fairbanks and Devin Williams. So if you see those two sign, that's when I wonder if it gets into they need to address this via trade, and it becomes some hipster reliever that the nerds tell me is great, but I have my doubts about the way that it ended up happening with Eric Swanson, the way that it happened with Anthony Bass. Like, that's kind of the move I'm hoping they avoid. I'd like to see them go get one of those velo dudes. Well, Fairbanks a little more question marks, given there's some cold weather stuff with him. Williams obviously is no certainty, but I think you got to hit on one of those guys. Quick break, come back, talk about the Leafs with Matthew Barnaby. Had to do a wellness check with our next guest. Longtime NHL forward, but also longtime New York Jets fan. Jets, unquestionably one of the most tortured fan bases in the NFL. I'll say it. They don't have a Super Bowl. The Namath one is like a fake one. That's like a million years ago. There was no teams. They're down bad. They choked away just a huge must-need tank game against the Atlanta Falcons. And their fans have been cheering for the tank year over year over year over year. So it's kind of pathetic. But I was like, okay, they're pulling in the right direction. They traded Quinn and Williams for a lot. They got this pick. And then they lost to the Falcons. Matthew Barnaby, longtime NHL forward, longtime New York Jets fans. You always fake like you're going to quit them. Is Barney there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we got you. There we go. Yeah, sorry, I didn't see you up on the screen. You always fake like you're going to quit the Jets. Like, you do this little pump fake hesitation move all the time. Like, they'll go through a down cycle, and then you go, this is enough. I'm not doing this anymore. I'll text you. You're like, I'm going to be a Bills fan now. I'm a Buffalo guy. I'm allowed to be a Bills fan. And then I know deep down in your heart, you can't quit them. You're not a quitter. You dig in when the going gets tough. That's when Matthew Barnaby gets ready to endure more. That Jets loss this weekend, like I said it, you guys had some momentum this year. Like, it felt like the rebuild was like finally in a good place. What a horrible win.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on. They're like the ex that is just great in bed and you just can't leave them. Except they're not great in bed. they're
so
awful.
They're just nothing. They're just
they're just nothing. No,
Yeah.
it's been torture, man. It's not like the tank helps anyway. It's not like we hit on second and third overall picks.
Yeah.
You know, Sam Darnold, we got rid of him, and yeah, he's not doing well.
Thank you.
Zach Wilson at number 2. That was great. We pass over on Josh Allen.
Yeah.
We're in another rebuild, and hey, we do have a Super Bowl though. It does count. It was a long time ago, and it wasn't in my lifetime, but it's the only thing I cling to as a Jets fan.
So I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, because I obviously have a lot of respect for the people who laid the foundation for sports as they are today. Like, there's just no doubt about it, right? And you read some of these stories, and it's incredible what a lot of these guys did in order for these teams to exist the way that they do. But the Jets Super Bowl feels very much like the Leafs, where you go like, yeah, they got one. But the Leafs never won a Stanley Cup beyond there being 6 teams. So do you discredit the guys that won those cups? Absolutely you don't. But do the Leafs have a single Stanley Cup when there were not, again, 6 teams? No. So it's hard when they put up the stats like the New York Jets Super Bowl winner or the Maple Leafs second most Stanley Cups. I always look at those and I'm like, Like, imagine if the Boston Celtics only won championships when they had Bill Russell and Bob Cousy, and then they never won again, and people were like, the famous Boston Celtics. You would go, nah. Like, you got to win them throughout the years in order for you to kind of keep that cachet as champions and to, I think, validate the championships before. Because, like, I look at those Bill Russell, Bill Cousy, or Bob Cousy championships with, like, great reverence, whereas I don't do that for, like, the Joe Namath Super Bowl. I look at that when you're such a loser like the Jets are or the Leafs are now, I look at those ones being like, thank God you got one when there were no teams.
It's the only thing I have over Bills fans. It's the only thing I have.
Joe Namath.
Listen, Joe Namath, man, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you weren't even alive." I'm like, "We got one." I always say to them, I said, "If a Lombardi Trophy came into Buffalo, you guys would think it's a spaceship because you've never seen one." I've seen one. I've seen one in our building, but yes, because they aren't on here today, it really doesn't count. It's just been a sad. I'm really appreciative that you had me on and make me feel like crap on a Monday morning.
This was not that. I'm doing a wellness check. I was trying to let you vent. It's good to get it out. It's good to be able to get it out and not just, text it or have to fire off a couple of messages being pissed off at people. Like, it's good to let it out. Okay, so
I even lost money. I have an emotional hedge. I bet against them every single week. That way I'm happy every week. And they cost me money and they cost us the tank yesterday.
That's the worst. Like, there's nothing worse than that. Okay, so Leafs had a real up and down weekend. They get shelled by Washington, and it's full-blown disaster. Then they have this, like, really dominant win against the Pittsburgh Penguins, who now I would say that they've put their best 4 periods against the Pittsburgh Penguins, so I kind of wonder if maybe you just own a team. But I'm just going to start with this. Like, when your team is up against it that way, where things feel like, hey, they're falling apart, how big is just being able to have a breath and a night like that where everybody gets on the score sheet and everybody has a positive moment and guys who are healthy scratches are actually contributing and, like, everybody just gets to be like, okay, woof. If they lost that game, no doubt about it, everything today is like the coach is fired, it's over. Hey, which players are they getting rid of? Like, how important is that? Like, how much can you just build off of one game like that as a team?
It's huge. And when you're struggling and finding inconsistency, and that's really been them all season long, right? Defensively have not been very good. And,
one of the worst teams in hockey.
Yeah, these kind of games are massive. I just think, you look for something and to galvanize a team. Well, they played really well against Pittsburgh, and this could be something that sets them up for the future. They have to take what they did well and you throw out the other ones, but you need a streak. This is a team that desperately needs a 5-6 game winning streak, and then they're back. But if they lose that game to Pittsburgh and don't play very well, you're right. It's all doom and gloom on Monday, and Toronto's the biggest market. It is the epicenter of hockey. So this would be a much different Monday. Those guys get to, take that breath on this Monday and now start building, hopefully, which is some consistency, what they just haven't had.
No. So here's the other thing, though. And I led the show with this. The win is nice. They get to kind of collect their breath and say, okay, feel good about something, right? Not hanging your head, not getting on the plane, feeling garbage. Like, you have something and you can point to something, and that's great. But for me, the Leafs are supposed to be a contender, not a playoff team, right? Like, it's a different story if, say, you're Detroit or you're Montreal and you're looking at this season where there's a couple steps back and you've got inconsistent play and you evaluate it through the lens of, let's just hang around the playoffs. Maybe we get in. That's a step for our organization. That's the way people have been talking about the Leafs, and that drives me crazy because I'm looking at it saying, whoa, that's not the goal. The goal isn't to hang around the playoff picture and win 5 games in a row and get in the back door as a wild card team. Last year, you won the Atlantic, and the the bet you made in losing Marner, and part of that was not their own decision, but was that you were going to be a deeper team, a more complete team. And when I look at what they've done so far, I read these stats already, but I'll read them to you. Man, the defending it's not just bad. It's again, bottom of the league, atrocious. They are 32nd against cycle chances, 30th against rush chances, 29th in opponents of offensive zone possession, 31st in slot chances against, 31st in shots against, and tied for 29th in goals against. You put together a sample like this that extends now to December 1st. How everyone always says, like, hey, defending is a choice, right? Defending is a lot about the decisions that you make. But genuinely, when you see those numbers, how much of that can you actually change in season?
You certainly can. Now, first and foremost, you need to get a save, right?
Yeah.
There's a team in the Western Conference, the Edmonton Oilers, that went to back-to-back Stanley Cups. They're having these same issues.
Yeah.
And I did a breakdown. We talked about that last week.
Yeah.
Of just how bad defensively, defensive minded and being committed doesn't take talent. It takes hard work and, like you said, good decisions, but also the will to make these right decisions and commit to outworking your opponent. Vegas doesn't get it wrong very often. And for 2 years in a row going into the season, Toronto was like plus 700 to win the Stanley Cup. Do you know what they were at the start of this year? Plus 1,700. So Vegas didn't think they were as good. They didn't think they were as deep. And anytime you lose a Mitch Marner, now this isn't what we're talking about defensively, but you're not as good a team losing a guy that had 103 points. Anyone that believed that they were going to be a better team, well, certainly didn't watch the Vegas odds and don't know how good Mitch Marner really is for your team. You know, it's again, it's like the ex breaks up with you and you're like, oh, she wasn't great anyways. Oh yeah, no, she was pretty good in this case.
Yeah, but Vegas sucks too, and he's been not so great. Like, you know, like Vegas hockey Twitter, which I don't trust. Like, it's not like, wow, the Vegas fans don't like a guy. Well, then you know he's not working out. Like, what do they know? Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
But going back to your question, you can change this in season. It just takes commitment and it takes hard work in practice and being diligent. Outwork the guy you're playing against. That's what defensive hockey is. Of course, there's decisions and there's schemes, but most teams play a pretty similar defensive style. Are you willing to outwork the person you're up against every single night?
So far, no.
So far, no. That's plain and simple. So far, no.
Yeah, so far, no. And again, they are missing guys on the blue line specifically. Now the forward group is fully healthy, and that's fine. Yeah. The way I look at it, though, is at some point you are who the stats say you are. And I do start to wonder when you can turn that around. And to your point about like outworking the opponent, I had a good chat with Versteeg last week where he mentioned that he didn't love it personally and that a lot of guys he played with didn't love it when the coach is just only harping at you to work harder, work harder, work harder. That you need them to be showing you why something isn't working. And so for a team like this, where the coach has been, and I'm not there in the room with Berube where he's trying to break it down schematically, him and Lalonde and the coverages that they're going over. So I'm sure that they are giving these guys tips, but we are seeing post games where he's talking about the same things you are, where it's like, you got to compete, you got to be harder working. How easy is it to start to tune that out though, when things are going poorly over, again, a stretch that is this long?
It certainly is when you hear the same message, and that's why a lot of coaches get fired when they're in a place for a long period of time. And not Berube's been here a long time, but it certainly start to tune out coaches. Now, in no which way are these guys not being pointed out in video what to do and being taught in practice exactly how they want it. And then it comes down to outworking the other guy, like I said. So yes, you can tune out that message, but I guarantee this coaching staff is teaching them. The guys just aren't doing it. And then you come down to, well, what's he going to say? Like, he can break it down, but if the guys aren't outworking the other guy and making good decisions, it doesn't matter what system you put in place if they aren't willing to play it.
So they got this Panthers game on Tuesday. And I actually feel like that win against the Penguins has only sort of elevated the import of this game, where they scored a ton of points. They beat the brakes off of them. Like I said, they get to feel good. Guys like Dakota Joshua, who I want to talk to you about in a second here. They get to feel involved. Everybody's happy-ish. Like, I'm sure they're not satisfied with where they are in the standings, but
relieved.
yeah, there's some measure of relief. But my thought against the Panthers is Tree Living basically tried to design this team around being better against the Panthers, right? Bigger blue line. Yes, they're missing guys. Bigger forwards. Heavy team. One of the heaviest teams in hockey. Older team. Veteran team. They're designed to play these guys tough. And I'm looking at this and saying, all right, you better at least have that part of it right. Like Tuesday, we overdo the measuring stick games in hockey, I think, because like how many years did the Leafs play the Bruins and they'd have some game or the Leafs beat them or the Leafs lost, and then you get to the playoffs and you went, oh yeah, I don't really care about that game. That turned out to be kind of irrelevant. But given where they are in the standings and given the way that they designed the team, like I just outlined, are you putting more stock into that one than you normally would a regular season game?
Well, listen, there's certain teams you get up for more than others. That's like when you have rivalries. When I played in Buffalo, Toronto was huge for us because they were so close in our rivalry. Philadelphia was big. It wasn't as big to go into New Jersey because we just didn't have that rivalry. So there are games that are I say more important in your mind. This one, I think it's big because if they lose to Florida, well, you don't really remember the Pittsburgh game, and you're not building on anything. It's just win one, lose one, win one, lose one. They can't be in that mindset right now. They got to raffle off 4, 5, 6 in a row to get them moving up the standings before it's too late. Right? There's any time that you lose a game or only get a point, well, you're losing ground on the rest of the Eastern Conference. And listen, we're past American Thanksgiving now. We know the numbers of teams that aren't in a playoff position come this date, and what likely happens at the end of the year. So if they don't beat Florida and Florida beats them somehow, some way, listen, everyone deals with injuries. That's just the way it is. Next man up, come and do your job. But if they don't beat the Florida Panthers, we're not going to remember the Pittsburgh Penguin game, and it's going to be back to doom and gloom.
Yeah, I think this one's going to be worse. Because, again, for me, it's not about – it is about making sure that you can get in a playoff position.
Yeah.
Obviously, you need to have a shot at the dance. But for me, it's like it's not about one game, the next game, one game, the next game. It's what you said. You've got to put together 6, 7, 8 games where, okay, you can drop a couple in there, but it can't keep looking this way. Like they beat the Blue Jackets last week, and they win it in overtime. They got outplayed, and there's been too many wins like that for the Leafs where like they limp into overtime, they get a huge goal that gives them the point, but nobody looks at the process and says, well, this team looks like they're turning a corner. This was one of the only times in the entire season where the Leafs can actually point to it and say, hey, we were actually better and won. Hey, there was actually process here that worked for us. And that's what I'm saying about the Panthers game is like, even this sounds harsh, but yeah, even if they win, but they get outshot 2-1 by Florida, and they just get Joe Wool standing on his head. He plays spectacular. Yeah. I don't know how great guys are going to feel about that. Like the bar now is becoming your process, and whether or not you can actually start to apply some of the things that we're talking about over a larger sample.
If you're getting outplayed, outshot, and outchanced, there's going to be the outlier where the goalie stands on his head. Or you get lucky and the other goalie doesn't play well for the other team. That's just luck. But just by sheer numbers, if you're getting outplayed every night and getting outshot, no chance, you're going to lose more than you win. It's how you play. Now, they'll take a win getting outplayed against Florida rather than play great and lose, because that's where they're at right now. But over the course of the year, if you don't figure out the things that are costing you, and you read the numbers at the start of the show, you read them. That's how bad they are. And they are what they are. You don't become the 32nd team in the league at defending and it just be by luck. This is a big enough sample size. Yeah. This isn't 4 or 5 games in.
No. It's not the normal panicky thing with the Leafs. And that's the thing is, I feel this year talking about this team is like, I've cried wolf so many times about the Leafs because I watch every single game and I carry the trauma of someone who has like followed this team for a long time. It's the same way with, like I said, with you with the Jets, where you tend to overreact to these moments because they built up over a long period of time. And now I've let a lot of these shows go, no, this is different. Like, this is worse. This isn't This isn't the normal just, hey, you're being negative about a team that ultimately is going to turn it around and be great. They've got to show more. Okay, last one. Dakota Joshua, it's been bad. And, like, really bad. Got a healthy scratch. And since the scratch, I think that the 2 games that he's put together have been the best 2 of his season. And it feels weird to look at it this way as someone who never played, that a healthy scratch could motivate you some kind of way. I don't know how sustainable it is. I don't know how long it lasts, but yeah, did that ever happen to you, or do you ever remember a teammate where something like this, like a real sharp kick in the ass, actually turned around their season?
I don't remember one per se. After I got through my first couple of years, I wasn't a healthy scratch, so I never had that. My first couple of years, you're just trying to find your way, right? Like you're just trying to find your way in the lineup. I don't think it was because I was playing horrible when I got healthy scratched. I was just learning, and we had some really good players that were ahead of me. But it was early on in my career, so I've seen Jeff Sanderson get scratched and be pissed off and come back and be on fire. It certainly does motivate you. Everyone's proud and everyone's playing for the next contract as well. And if you're getting a healthy scratch, you're not going to make money. So I just think for more than anything, it's a wake-up call. It's like, okay, like you're doing video if you're getting a healthy scratch to see what you're doing wrong. And for him, it's an intensity thing, I think, as well, and making good decisions. But they need him to be physical. They need to be in the forecheck. And that's what this team desperately misses right now.
Yep.
They have some talent. They still have a lot of talented guys on that team, but it's that snarl, that Florida Panthers that they're trying to build. That's what he has to bring to this lineup. He has to bring some snarl. And I think it can be a wake-up call. Like you said, he's played well the last little bit, but again, it's not 1 or 2 games. It has to be consistent. That's the difference between guys that play a long time and guys that come in, play a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's learning how to be a pro and learning how to be a consistent hockey player that the coach knows every time that he throws you over the boards, he knows what he's going to get. Not great one game, terrible the next. Great one game, terrible the next. And he hasn't even had the great ones yet. It's just been good lately.
Well, also, my thought is that can only work so many times. Like,
then you're gone.
Yeah, but I'm just
then
like,
you're gone.
Yeah, if you're getting another healthy scratch for this guy, and they're trying to make the same motivator, that's where I would think as a player you start to go, no, I'm not motivated to get back in and prove you wrong. I'm starting to check out and say, I'm thinking about where I'm going to be next.
And listen, there's guys like that. It would piss me off to no end because I'm a competitive person. I'm a proud person, and I again, you get healthy scratch. You're saying to everyone around Toronto, this guy's not good enough to be in our lineup right now.
And also, you're going to get talked about.
Of course, yeah. So, especially in a market like Toronto. But if it happens multiple times, well, you don't have it in you to change. You're probably preparing, like you said, for your next spot because it's not going to be long. If you start getting healthy scratched twice, 3 times, 4 times, you're probably going bye-bye.
All right. Well, I'll be watching tomorrow. We'll catch up soon. Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, brother. Love you.
Hey, pal. Yeah. Matthew Barnaby, longtime NHL forward. Man, okay. Again, I'm just going to reset this. You should be happy that the Leafs won if you are a Leafs fan. You should be happy that there was a positive step forward, and you got to start somewhere. So I don't want to be doom and gloomy after they put together one of their best wins of the season. But this is just, it's not. I think Barney actually made a great point where he went, it can't be one game, then the next game. And it's not about playoff standings, though, for me. Because people keep bringing that up. And I've been there, too. And that's something that I've fixated on as well, is already having standings watch in November. For me, this isn't about standings watch anymore. This is about trying to find out what it is that you actually have in terms of what the next phase is for your hockey team. They don't have a lot, as we've gone over a multitude of shows, and as anybody knows, like every single person that is even on the periphery when it comes to Maple Leaf fandom understands that they do not have an asset pile that they're going to be able to pull from in order to improve this team. Nor does it look like a group that should deserve it, but that's a separate thing. But if you are going to be trying to make a move, you have to be very concrete in what it is that this team is building and the direction that they are taking. Because then you're just doubling down on what has been essentially a disastrous start. And so for me, like I get what he's saying, and I would be wrong to disagree with it by going, well, if they have great process but they lose to the Panthers, how are we going to evaluate this? And you're going to nitpick at the reasons why they lost the game. Of course that is. But I'm not the win-loss record. Yes. But what I'm saying is they need to change a lot of the process in order for what I believe to be smart people to think that this is something that is actually trending in the right direction, where it isn't better for you to take this step back. Because that's where I'm at right now. And I think it's going to take quite a bit for me to move off of this opinion that the Leafs are in desperate need of a reset. They need to move off of a few of these guys that are older players, some of these guys that have not worked out, try to accumulate some draft picks, try to accumulate some prospects, not go in the tank next year. I'm not for a teardown. I've had some people mention that to me, like, isn't this the offseason where you explore the Matthews trade? Like, no, I don't think so. I don't think it's that dire. Even if the season ends up being a disaster where essentially you finish the year where you are now, which is one of the worst defending teams in hockey, one of the, teams that's outside the playoff picture, I still don't advocate for a teardown. I don't think that you can. You look at where Tavares is, you look at so many of these other players that are signed to long-term deals that I don't think that you're going to be able to get off of. Where you're at in net, where the market is, what ownership is going to want. It doesn't make sense to me that there will be a full teardown. But in order to get a better sense that this team is going to be competitive for cups, the bet of more depth, better depth, that has to be built internally, and that has to be built with better fits. And the only way that that's going to feel any different for me is if you're getting, again, a real full month right now of, and it is right now, because it doesn't matter if you do it once you're completely out of the postseason picture or if you do fall out of the standings. Like, now is the time. This month in December, early January, this is when the Leafs are going to have their opportunity to basically show that they are more capable of looking like a contender than they have so far this season. Because so far, there has not been a stretch. There's been periods, and those have been few and far between. But there have not been stretches where this team has looked like a Stanley Cup contender. And even, like, I've seen people make the Edmonton comparison where they go, well, who's in the worst spot, Edmonton or Toronto? Because Edmonton looks like they're a tire fire too. Yeah, but at least Edmonton has had the proof of concept of making it to Stanley Cups. Did they lose? Sure. But they've done it. They've had these bad starts and then turned it around and been hyper competitive come postseason time and beat the brakes off of a bunch of teams. Leafs don't get that benefit of the doubt. They get some of it in terms of their regular season ability. Hey, they've endured some tough stretches where the media and the fan base has been at their throats, and they've overcome it in order to position themselves where they're playing playoff hockey. But if you were going to feel like the DNA was changing, that was supposed to be, hey, they feel like a contender now. They feel deeper. They feel like they're better positioned for the postseason. And that's why, again, tomorrow is going to be so important. We'll take a quick break. But before we do that, who wants to win a bunch of cash while doing the best thing this holiday season? Sportsnet 590 The Fan is all in supporting the 50-50 Fortune for Sick Kids. It's a 50-50, so the more money we raise, the more kids we can help, and the more holiday cash you can win. The current take-home prize is guaranteed to be $194,000. That'll be $200,000 by the end of today. Buy your tickets at 5050fortune.ca or text the word money to 59590 and we'll send the link right to your phone. 18 plus. Please play responsibly. Standard message and data rates apply. Lottery license RAF 1518410. Quick break. We'll hit what we missed. All right, it's time for what we missed. Brandon Brown is here. Armin's going to chime in from the upstairs studio in a minute here. But I always got to start with Brandon on a Monday after a Bills win. Because let's be honest, man. Let's just tell the truth. We were texting during the game. And there were some tough moments for the Bills in that one. And when the Steelers punched in that touchdown, it was feeling like, man, you guys are soft. But you got pumped up when Bosa made a play. And you're not a pumped up guy. Like, Brandon's not in the chat, in our group chat, he's not exactly firing text all the time. And you were pumped with Bosa. Part of me gives the Bills a lot of credit because they obviously ran the ball down Pittsburgh's throat. They set a record at, I'm still calling it Heinz Field. What's it called? Acrisure?
Acrisure Stadium.
Yeah, Acrisure. Sorry, Acrisure. It's Heinz Field.
Yeah.
It's just really tough to overcome that one. And I get it when people go, hey, it's weird when you can't change the name of a stadium when it was a brand, but that one was that brand for so long. But it does, I will admit, it does take a little bit away from Buffalo, knowing they were doing the exact same run play, basically 70% of the game, and it kept working against the Steelers. It felt like, you ever play video games against someone and you do the same move every single time, and they go, is this even fun for you? You just do the same move every single time? You do the same play every single time? That was the Steelers, but in real life in professional sports.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I think it's so rare that you see that, especially in football, because teams are so quick to adjust.
Yeah,
it doesn't usually work out. But yeah, like you said, credit to the Bills for being able to just put the early kind of, a feeling of an upset potentially, put it away. And yeah, I think the Joey Bosa play to start the second half was just a complete mindset flip for that team. They gained a little bit of confidence, and then they were ready to kind of continue to push. And offensively, they found their groove a little bit by just continuing to do what worked.
Well, you know what was especially encouraging for me with the Bosa play is how many times this season have the Bills had like a real playmaker moment on defense?
Rare, not many.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the spooky thing about Buffalo is the receiver thing is beyond obvious.
Yeah.
Like Brandon Cooks made a catch early on in the game. It was a nice one. And I went, oh, right. And even during the game, who was on the call? Was it Romo? No. Who was on the call this week?
Yeah, no, it was Nance and Romo.
It was Nance and Romo, right? Yeah. Romo and Nance are going on about big play Gabe. Because they have this one play where he's split outside on the third down, and they're like, yeah, they got the one-on-one matchup with Gabe Davis. And I'm thinking, that's cool, but he wasn't playing football all year for a reason.
Yeah.
This guy is no great shakes. I know everybody likes him because he's friends with Shane Gillis, but outside of that, when it comes to the actual football field application, if you have to be doing the big game Gabe Davis thing, how many years ago was it even that Gabe Davis had that game for you guys? 3 now?
I think, 3 seasons ago.
Yeah, so let's pump the brakes on that one. So that's obvious. To me, the big thing with them is their defense is not tough, and they don't make plays. There's way too many times where a team's throwing down the field on them. The Bills didn't get any pass rush, and then I'm seeing Trey White get overwhelmed by somebody and going, yeah, it's 2025. Trey White shouldn't be this visible on your football team. So I did like that. I liked that they smacked Rodgers around. I liked that they actually beat up on the Steelers and that from the second half onward, they felt tough. They felt tougher. But a lot of that starts with the Allen thing that I was talking about earlier, which is when he's running the ball and he's doing those designed quarterback runs, specifically, like when it's 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4. And yeah, it was Romo because he's going, the legs, Jim, the legs. You got to watch out for the legs. That's when I feel good about the Bills. That's when I feel like they can beat anybody in the NFL. It feels like there's like a trickle-down thing. I've talked about this with the Leafs with Matthews. When Matthews is scoring a ton of goals and he's doing the Christ pose or the gladiator, you're not entertained pose, whichever one it actually is. I don't know if anybody's actually cleared that up. Probably gladiator.
I would think.
Probably gladiator. Either way, I always feel like the Leafs get a ton of energy off of that. That the team kind of changes and starts to morph into the confident version of Matthews. And it's the same thing with the Bills. When Allen is running the ball, not just making the plays down the field where it's against a sloppy defense, where he can just kind of pick them apart and throw for 1,000,000 yards. It's the running the ball where it feels like it's him and James Cook, and it's as deadly as you felt the year ago when it was Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson doing that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like you said, when Allen's making the right decisions, especially on like those RPO plays where he has to decide on a quick slant or if he's running the ball, when he's at his best, it is making those right decisions. And a lot of the time it is him taking it up the middle himself or finding a seam to kind of break through. And yeah, we saw yesterday how involved he was with the run game. And obviously Cook, I think you just got to keep feeding him at this point. Like
Cook's really good.
Yeah, the offense is going to run through him. And I think that's how they find their success. If they are going to have any success in the pass game, it has to be, complementing the run because that's where they're going to really make their damage.
Cook's really good, but then they've also got Davis and Johnson, who were giving Nance fits.
I don't trying to figure out which one.
I don't think Nance got it right on the first try the entire game. But those two guys like literally run the same way. But it's a nice little change of pace where the two of them are actually competent too. It's not just some slow, crappy plotter, or a lot of times a team has an undersized guy that's only supposed to be there for the passing. Like both those guys can competently run between the tackles and break one for at least 10, 12. So, yeah, obviously the rushing attack has now become the Bills' identity, right? Is they can't really throw the ball, but if they can run on you and they can put you down in games where the defense can actually pin their ears back and get after you, I feel as good about the Bills as anybody. It's when they're in a close game, just like that Steelers game was looking early, and the other team feels like you can run on you. I hate like that goal line play. It feels so predictable that a team on short yardage can run down the middle on the Bills and punch it through that D-line, punch it through those linebackers. So, yeah, a lot to prove, but I'm coming away from that one feeling pretty good about the Bills. And, again, like a weekend where everybody was flat and nobody was good, and like I mentioned with Brady, I'm sticking with my take. This one's staying the whole ways. This is the Bills' year. It has to be the Bills' year, and if it's not, disaster. Because, yeah.
It definitely felt like that first half, and we talked about, like, the confidence level was dropping
Low,
a ton. After watching that first half. It just felt like if that's how they're going to play against good teams, it's not going to work.
Yeah, they got to feel tough somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's where they feel tough, is Allen running. Anyways, what did we miss?
So sticking on the gridiron, we had an interesting situation playing out with Lane Kiffin, I guess former Ole Miss head coach, now moving over to LSU. And it seemed like, he's moving on in the middle of the season here. He was on his way to what looked like a playoff berth with Ole Miss. Won the Egg Bowl, I think, on Friday afternoon. And then after that, news started to come out that he was going to be heading to LSU, and the Ole Miss is not going to allow him to finish off the season there. So I wanted to get your thoughts first on that decision and whether or not he should have been looking to stick it out with this squad before moving on to obviously a great program.
So college football, I'm more of a casual fan, right? I watch the big games. I watched Michigan, Ohio State this weekend, right?
Sure.
I want to see that. And that was great. I love a good rivalry. I love the end of the game, trying to see if, Ohio State was going to go plant the flag, and seeing all the Michigan fans like Dave Portnoy cry.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. College football has professional sports to me are losing rivalries. Like, if you ask fans, who's your rival? There's not too many teams where it feels like, oh, man, you really got to watch these two teams play. Ravens-Steelers next weekend is one of them.
For sure.
I think Bears-Packers is now kind of becoming more of one of them now that the Bears are on the rise. For me, in my lifetime, it's been Seahawks-Niners. It's felt like there's been some real juice there. And yet this year it doesn't feel quite the same. Maybe it's just because where the Rams are positioned. But you look at hockey, for example. How many teams in a sport like that, a physical sport, do you feel like you have to watch these two teams play because there is a blood feud between the two of them? Not many.
Yeah.
NBA, how many rivalries are there? Like genuine, true blue rivalries. Right now, I would say that Bucks-Pacers is weirdly near the top for me, where it's two teams that hate each other, but the Pacers are beat up. College football still has it. But outside of it, a lot of what needed to change, which was the money, isn't working. And when you see something like this, my first thought goes to, they clearly need to change the rules around player portals and not have it turn into just the Wild West, which it seems to be over the last couple of years with the NIL money. But how are you supposed to communicate some kind of a message where you're looking for fairness from players when a head coach of a team that has a shot to win a national championship this year can just bail on you in late November and go to a rival where he's getting more money and more opportunity? And it just doesn't sit well with me. I get it. Everybody's got to do what's best for them in their careers. And I guess Lane Kiffin prayed on it. So I'm sure Ole Miss fans read that tweet and went, he prayed on it, guys. He really took some time. Like, come on, man. It's an ugly situation. It's an embarrassing situation for college football. It does create animosity between those two teams. That is kind of fun. That now, again, because for me personally, if you would have said Ole Miss and LSU are on TV this weekend, I would have gone, that's nice. If it's on during one of the flips, then I'll catch a piece of it. But it wasn't going to be must-see for me. And I think a lot of there's diehard college football fans. College football, in a lot of ways, is awesome. But I don't think the vast sporting populace here is getting ready for Saturday and treats it the way that they do in the States. Of course not. But now all of a sudden that game matters. But yeah, Lane Kiffin sucks. Like, that's such a loser crap move. It's so ugly. And then for him to tweet it like, I tried to stay to coach the rest of the season, of course you were going to be gone. And I think that Ole Miss treated it the best way possible, which was the tweet where they put his clothes out on the parking lot, where the fans drive to the airport and they're giving him the bird and screaming at him the entire way out. That made me feel good about the state of college football. But yeah, Lane Kiffin, to do that for a team that is right there, for a program that's dying for a win, that is going to be in the national championship conversation. It's ugly. And I just don't, my issue is I don't know what the solution is. I don't know where the college sports are supposed to go with the added complications of the way coaches can leave, the way that recruiting was always important, but the way that recruiting has changed year over year in the transfer portal, the amount of good coaches we've seen leave college sports because they're just tired of it, the turnover with some of these great coaches. Yeah, I don't think those rivalries will ever go away because it's so important to those communities, right? Ultimately, the fans will care so much. But in terms of its place in sports, it's starting to feel way too professionalized than I think college athletics should. And I don't know where they look to find the balance.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think when you're a player and you're potentially looking to go join the LSU team, obviously maybe not the next couple of years, but
yeah, you can't do it in season.
Yeah, and if the coach can leave at any time, what gives you the confidence that he's going to stick around, or that if you're moving to any program, you kind of want to have that security of knowing
all those players, all those players on that team.
Yeah.
Why would any of them want to stick it out with that program when their head coach just bailed and now they've got a new coach and you're like, oh, okay. Same thing happened to Washington after they made it to the national championship game. And Kalen DeBoer immediately left for the Alabama job. And you go, you're going to bolt immediately? But the way that's looked at it by most people is like, well, you can't turn down Bama. And I get it.
Yeah.
But it's just, and then again, a bunch of the players left Washington. All of a sudden there's a mass exodus of players. And you feel like your program has been set back a decade. That it's going to be a long time before you ever see something like that that's competent. Also, that it feels like, remember what was the soccer team that won in the Premier League?
Leicester City?
Leicester.
Yeah.
Leicester City wins. That college sports is feeling so much like that, where you're not really building a program year over year over year to have great success. You're having a program try to get their one little shot before the coach and all the players enter a transfer portal and end up going somewhere better. They get their transfer fees because the team is actually good. And that kind of sucks. I don't really like that. Anyways, what's next?
Well, we had a situation last week where a Sacramento Kings fan called out Zach LaVine and some of the other Kings players during a timeout, again, in their game last week. I'm trying to remember exactly who it was against, but it was last Wednesday.
Doesn't matter. It's Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, and the fan actually put together a video after the fact and kind of explained his situation. And, he got very honest about it. I think he was saying that the timeout was called, the players came over, and he was saying, I want to get exactly what he said. He said, yo, we don't want you to not play defense. So, I mean, I think it's a pretty fair criticism of the fan to ask professional players to maybe play some defense. And, just wanted to get your thoughts on the situation. And
so I do think that this particular situation ends up being escalated because Russell Westbrook is on the Kings bench. And he starts jawing with the fan, who is yelling something that, in my opinion, is beyond fair criticism. But he is got to be number one, maybe Luka Doncic. Those two guys at the very top of a fan is yelling something and they're on their bench getting the play drawn up and they're actually going to turn and start yapping back at the guy and have it turn into something bigger. So I can't really take the fan fully at his word that these are the only things he said. Maybe he threw some expletives in there. Maybe like whatever, right? It's one of those give me a reason to throw you out things. And once he starts going with Westbrook, and he's a New York guy, by the way. Yeah. This Kings fan is from New York originally. I think he's from Brooklyn. And he's got the accent, and he cares about hoops. But he's a Kings fan now. And my prevailing takeaway from it is two things. One, we need more fans like that. We need more fans. And I'm not saying we need more fans who scream at players and try to make things personal. Like, obviously, there's a line. And it used to be a certain way that was, I think, kind of horrible. And it's evolved to a place where I think fans are afraid to scream things at the players at games. That's part of buying a ticket to me, is that you get to voice your displeasures when you have them. And if you pay tens of thousands of dollars, which is what it costs to sit in those kind of seats, and you want to yell, play defense, You shouldn't feel like a criminal for doing that. So good for this guy for yelling that, because Zach LaVine takes plays off. That's what he's known for. And there was one little blip with Chicago where he started to play D, and then he was in Team USA conversations, and people went, look, Zach LaVine, he's so athletic. You can't be that athletic and that piss poor a defense. It's obviously an effort thing. So for this guy who's paying tens of thousands of dollars to go to Sacramento Kings games, who's paying for the nice jacket, he's pissed and he's yelling something. I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. What I have an issue with is the NBA culture in particular, because this is way worse in the NBA than other leagues, right? Like, you can bang on the glass, you can yell stuff, and granted, like, you're closer to the players, so it's different than the NFL, which is in a loud-ass stadium. And you see it sometimes with players on their benches interacting with fans, and they go back and forth. But when do you ever see those fans get kicked out? You got to say something horrific. And in the NBA, I feel like the line for a fan to get kicked out of the stadium when they've paid good money for seats is low, man. And once again, I don't even know who I'm speaking to with this, because you got to be completely brain dead to turn this into like, well, what if they say something that's rude or inappropriate or racist? It's like, yeah, obviously there's a line.
Yeah.
You can't personalize it anymore where you're just name calling and you're insulting.
It can't get to a point where the players are the sole deciders of who gets kicked out.
That's what I mean.
It's like Josh Giddey, some guy yells at him.
That one was a little different, though, because the fan did say something that was like a line crossing.
I didn't see what he said at all. I just mean, like, at this point, it's come to like a player just pointing at a guy and like, he's out. It's like, okay, did he just say something you didn't like? Because like, this game isn't built for just you.
Totally, man. That's what I mean. It's like these players are making tens of or hundreds of millions of dollars to play basketball. And they go to these games, and now it's like, I swear to God, man, this feels like more of an NBA culture, and it's sports culture in general, but like, these guys are doing it kind of the worst, where they want everything, man. They want the money. They want to be able to chill on defense. They don't really want to be criticized. They want to have media members that are only from the team that are coming down to the locker room. Like, did you see James Harden interact with the media this week? He throws this eye roll. Yeah, the heavy eye roll when he's being asked like a legitimate question. And dude, no one's doubting that it's frustrating when media is coming into your place of business and asking you questions when things are going poorly. But so many times these questions are beyond fair, and you can hear it in the reporter's voice where they're like, James. And even this reporter was like, James, you're one of the great floor raisers. Like, he's complimenting him in the question, full coward mode, and James Harden still is not even giving him a piece. And I feel for that Kings fan. And that's how you ruin sports, is that you start to turn on the fans. You make the fans the enemy. You make the fans the villain when all they're doing is saying, hey, man, play defense. Hey, we paid a lot of money to see you play defense. And for some of these players, that's becoming like a taboo. That, oh, no, what we want you to do is we want you to fork out the hundreds of dollars, the thousands of dollars for tickets, and we want you to clap when things are going good, and we want you to root us on. And if we lose and it's quiet in there, it's your fault because you didn't get up on your feet. You weren't celebrating the team enough. Like, it's becoming joke level stuff. Anyways, subscribe to the pod. We'll see you tomorrow.